This is Extra Paycheck Podcast, episode number 58.
You're listening to Extra Paycheck Podcast, where you will learn how to build and grow your own successful online business. Now, here's your host, Alex Soul.
Welcome to yet another episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. This is episode number 58, and in today's episode, I have a very special guest for you. Her name is Chantelle Duffield, and she is helping performance arts studios to get more people through their doors. Enjoy today's episode. Hi, Chantelle, and welcome to the Extra Paycheck Podcast.
Thank you, Alex. It's lovely to be here with you.
Please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what is that you do as a business?
So my background is as a music teacher, essentially. I was a choral conductor for many years, and through that course of being involved in the performing arts, I ran performing arts summer camps for kids, and I did that through university actually whilst I was studying, and I grew my business called Born to Perform to have 6 venues, and I had 35 teachers working for me, and 1,000 kids coming through the door, and it was really beautiful. It was such a wonderful business that really inspired me, and as I learned about how to really quickly scale that business and attract more students to get really systemized, because when you've got 6 venues running, you've got to be quite savvy about, being consistent,
yeah.
Especially with kids. You've got to be running very good systems. And then I had an opportunity to move overseas, and I sold my business. And then after that, I got approached by a performing arts studio to say, where did you go? Like, where did your business go? Because it was absorbed. And from then, I've just been mentoring performing arts studio owners, dance schools, drama academies, music schools, in how to grow their businesses, how to attract more of the right kinds of students, the ones that, don't leave after a month, and how to really boost their retention and systemize their businesses. And we do that through a variety of online courses, live events, and also kind of one-on-one mentoring. So it's a really very, very niche business that I have, that we speak very much the language of studio owners, but at core, it's all about getting more students passionate and falling in love with the performing arts is at heart what we do.
Awesome story. Well, first of all, I'm really happy to hear that you're pronouncing the word as niche and not niche.
Yes.
Like a lot of people do. It bothers me for some reason. I don't know why. I also pronounce it as niche. And I think this is a great lesson to those listening to the Extra Paycheck Podcast, that selecting a very targeted niche is usually what you need to do, and what makes it easier, I guess, in a way, because you're not running all over the place, targeting like every studio and every school in the world. You're really concentrating on your niche, which is performing arts, as you mentioned. And I'm sure it has been easier to I'm sure it would have been a lot harder if you were targeting like a whole bunch of different industries at the same time.
Certainly. And I really do feel that has actually been the secret to, how quickly we've grown and how much success we've had has been that we're able to really connect with the situations the studio owners are in right now. And in all our marketing communication, in our programs, it's really speaking their language. And that just helps so much to, build that connection and build that rapport in order to, have people come on board. There's been times when I've had people suggest to me, oh, you should go and, speak to yoga studios. You should speak to karate studios. And, in many ways that could be a great business opportunity because it's such another huge scale of market. But at the end of the day, my personal passion, my personal background is the performing arts. And I feel that if I can, it's a big enough niche as it is, I suppose, but also, if I can really just zone in on the performing arts studio owners, they're going to feel like someone's really speaking to them. And I think it's important to know who you want to attract and speak directly to them. And the better you can do that, the easier it is.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. And I'm not sure how this applies to, let's say, dance studios, but I know in Montreal, I personally know 2 people that are running martial arts schools, right? Mm-hmm. And they, like, the guys are amazing trainers. They're very nice. How should I put it? They're very nice socially, and they're very like approachable and likable. So they're great teachers. They teach well. The prices are actually pretty low for the courses, yet they're struggling to pay their rent.
Yeah.
because because I guess it's the marketing, That's what I always told them. I'm like, look, I can't help you personally because I don't know anything about your industry, but you're doing something wrong. You're not doing your marketing properly, because this is like everyone who stumbled upon those two studios. Well, especially there's one that I'm talking about in particular because I'm thinking of them right now. And everyone who signed up, they remained a student for like years because they really loved it. The problem is the guy's not getting enough people through the door, right? And is it the same kind of problem that dance studios usually have,
Oh,
or is it
absolutely.
easier?
No, exactly the same. If you think about someone who opens a dance studio or a karate studio, it's because they're absolutely passionate about teaching and transforming the lives of their students and that connection, and they love the teaching side of running a business. Where they really, it's the kind of their Achilles heel is that it's the marketing, it's the systems, it's the consistency. And a lot of studio owners really struggle with that whole business side. And so much of what we do is, it's almost like, they're very comfortable in the teacher role of running a studio. It's almost about helping them to embrace more of the studio management, the entrepreneurial side of running a business. Many of them, it's really interesting, Alex, many people, I've asked this, would you rather have more time to work on the business and growing the business, or would you rather have someone step in to run the business like a manager and you just concentrate on teaching? And usually it's about 50-50. Half of the studio owners I know just want to teach, and the other half are actually passionate about growing the business. So from an industry perspective, we've got this dichotomy of they're relying on their businesses to make money, and yet they all they want to do is just do what makes them happy. So it's definitely about kind of walking them through that process of teaching them easy ways to help them get more students through the door, as you said. And that's my job, really. That's what I see my role as.
Mm-hmm. I understand. And this is, I think the same applies to struggling artists, like painters and musicians. Yeah. And a lot of them are really good at what they do. They're super passionate.
They are.
And, how often we hear just follow your passion and the money will come. And I think it's not necessarily true, especially for many of those industries. You could be like world's greatest musician, but if you don't put yourself out there and if you don't get your demos to producers and studios, and, if public doesn't hear you often enough, chances are you'll die a struggling artist who can, barely buy it's
true. And it is heartbreaking. I mean, I get emails every single day from studio owners who are on the brink of having to close down the doors. And it's utterly devastating because as they're phenomenal teachers. That's the hard thing, that they're so talented, they care so much. But, at the end of the day, like anything in business, it's consistency that wins. And like you're saying, like if they're not putting themselves out there enough, if the marketing isn't connecting in the right way, and then they're not going to be gaining enough awareness within the community to keep people coming in and keep that pipeline of new students coming through the door. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of consistency. But then, on the other hand, I know consistency is really hard. So one thing that I really concentrate on is how can we automate the marketing? How can we kind of develop, automated follow-up sequences to keep nurturing those inquiries and keep them coming through the door? Because, that gives them the freedom, the time to still do what they love, to be with their students, to teach, and to be on that creative, to stay in their creative zone, which is where they want to stay. It's a balancing act.
Yeah, totally. That is so true. And Chantelle, how did you get started with your actual business right now, the courses that you teach? Like because you said you started kind of mentoring people,
yes,
and consulting them, but then you grew it into an actual like full-time business. How did that process happen?
Yeah, it was quite organic, I suppose. Like this is my sixth year of running studio expansion, and it initially started where I was just kind of one-on-one consulting and just mentoring, and I didn't even call it coaching. I mean, I didn't even charge. I just went for coffee with people at the beginning and were just sharing what worked for me, and then I kind of started charging, and very quickly before long I was at capacity, and so I thought, well, this is not going to work. I need to be able to reach more people and leverage my time. So that's when I created the online course. And the first one I did it was actually the student attraction system, and that has done very well. And then that's been kind of, it was like a standalone product where they could download a manual essentially. But then when my business truly took off, I created a 10-week online course. And this is kind of, very much about, it's got a phenomenally beautiful community that the company's at. And every week for 10 weeks, they get videos and resources. And I kind of literally walk them through over 10 weeks how to revamp all their marketing, how to build the systems, how to kind of boost their retention and develop their team. And that has been absolutely transformational, and that the studio expansion program has had hundreds and hundreds of studios go through the doors now, and it's really our signature program that I'm so proud of. And interestingly enough, because I'm based in Sydney, Australia, but 85% of my business is based in the US and Canada, funnily enough, over your side of the world. And so it's fascinating with an online business how, especially in my niche, the challenges that someone is facing in Sydney are the same as the studios in Montreal. We've got people from Austria, from Malaysia, we've had people in Portugal. We've had people all over the world in the programs, and studio owners across the world. It's the same challenge, which is just such a wonderful uniting place for the conversation to start.
Makes a lot of sense. And this is, I'm really happy to hear that, because as you know, I'm an online guy, right? So that's my thing, online marketing. I love that. And I think I understood that when I just started learning about online marketing and affiliate marketing. And what happened that in the first or second week of starting, I made a commission of $33. I still remember it after 8 years, because those kind of proved to me that it works. You can make money online, and you could, people buy stuff online. People go shopping on Amazon all the time. So there is money being spent. So there is money being made by someone as well, right? So one of the biggest realizations was, for me, was the fact that the sale, it came, I think, sometime like at 3 a.m. or something. I saw it when I woke up, and it came, I think, from UK. And this is when it really clicked for me. It was like, oh my God, this is like a business that's open 24 hours, regardless if you're there. And it's catering to the whole world. Like anybody from any country could just buy your stuff, and you don't have to, be there. You don't have to, like you said, if you're doing consulting one-on-one, the problem is you're very limited. There's only that many hours in a day that you have.
Yes.
So this whole online thing, I still find it fascinating. And I think we're just scratching the surface of possibilities of internet and everything. But this is, it's an amazing story that you're sharing with us here.
Well, and it's wonderful, and there is so much potential, like you're saying. I mean, my kind of way of connecting with people has predominantly been through webinars, and they're just so much fun. And I find it amazing how 60 minutes with someone, they don't know you before, but I run very conversational style webinars. I like to kind of really help people on the line and really dig in with them. And it costs nothing. Like it costs nothing to have that time with someone to teach them, to connect with them that way, and then invite them to kind of work with you further. It's such a highly scalable model to be able to really help more people. At the end of the day, that's what we do. So it's very, very exciting to see even the potential go forward. And I'm very blessed with Facebook ads particularly, and webinars have been my best friends in the business. They've been a godsend.
All right. So Chantelle, I have questions about this particular business, being online business. Where did you learn to do all that you do, or did you have to hire people? For instance, how to build up your website, how to set up your Facebook ads, how to track them, how to manage all of that. How did that come to you?
Well, back in the early days, I learned everything. I just taught myself everything, and I built my first website myself. I built my first membership site myself. I taught myself. I bought Amy Porterfield's Facebook ad course, and I taught her. I taught myself how to do Facebook ads. I had some wonderful mentors along the line who I really admired and who were very generous with helping me, expand the business. And I learned a lot from Taki Moore, and from my coach over the last 2 years has been Victoria Gibson in Australia, and she's kind of very much a women's online entrepreneurial coach, and she's been just incredibly helpful. So I think having the mentors kind of show you what to do differently and how to structure your launches, how to structure your campaigns, has been really invaluable. But, I bootstrapped for years and years and years. And it was only I did a rebrand about 18 months ago with my, Dara Donnelly did my whole, my brand concept, and then we built a new website around that. And since then, as we're going, I'm gradually up-leveling everything from the ones I just created myself, which, I'm no designer by any stretch of the imagination, to now creating a much more comprehensively and beautifully consistent brand. And you don't have to be flash to begin with. And it was only I only started having a virtual assistant about 12 months ago. Funnily enough, I did everything myself up until that point. I got my first VA 12 months ago. And since then, I've now got an online business manager who kind of manages all my launches, integrations, opt-ins, funnel building, things like that. And then I have a beautiful community manager who I'm so grateful for as well, to help me manage the level of engagement in the groups, because that's really important. Kind of sustaining the community has been one of the secrets, I would say, and really just over-delivering on that support side, to keep people connected, to really, to have people understand that studio expansion is where they go to for help. That is what our intention is, to really become known as the leader in this industry, for the most practical and the most motivational content. That's if we can sustain that and continue to build really good resources, then we're on track in to do well.
This is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I always tell people, especially beginners, beginner entrepreneurs, especially online, because people ask me, well, I don't know where to start, because building a website and graphics and all of that, I don't know any of that. I'm totally new to this, and I think I'm not going to make it because I don't even know how to put up a website. And I tell them, look at like anyone successful online, any successful website. It probably started with a person who had no idea what a website was, No we
idea.
all start somewhere.
And I don't know how to code. I think I used like an optimized press theme is how I kind of originally got started. And I just kind of taught myself, and God knows it wasn't perfect. But that's not the point. I have a really big belief around, I think people hold back so much because they want it to be perfect. My attitude and my whole philosophy is, perfection is overrated. I want to be prolific. If I could just get it out there, and near enough is good enough is an attitude to life almost, which is good in some ways. Maybe I can improve that in other ways.
Yeah, totally. And I had some guests on the podcast who also share the same mentality, and they say, if you're looking for perfection, then you're really wasting your life, because you could spend 20 years thinking of how to perfectly make a website, right?
That's right.
But it's much better to just build one right now and spend the next 20 years perfecting it slowly, because every day you learn something new. You could add something, but that's something that you could always improve on things, and you should be improving things all the time. But it's taking that, hard action right away and just starting and doing something. That's, I think, is a lot more important than, doing something that's really good. You could always fix it, but you need to start.
And I know that the tech side holds a lot of people back. I mean, especially with my beautiful clients, they don't love technology. In fact, it's the bane of their life. But if we think about it from a marketing perspective, and this relates to very much for, the online community as well, what is the defining factor that's going to make someone decide to come on board with you? It's probably not whether that opt-in page looks exactly like this or it looks exactly like that. It's how they connect with you. It's your voice. It's the content you're teaching. It's the generosity of information. It's the openness. And if I always feel that, it doesn't have to be beautiful to start with, because if you were just kind of going out there with confidence, with the right attitude to serve, people will resonate with that and the business will grow, and then you can reinvest. It's all about if you've got an idea of what you want to create, then just go into that and just be consistent with your content, get your voice out there and start learning how to speak the language of the people you want to connect with, and everything will flow from there. That's all you have to do. Just be consistent in getting your voice out there. It's worked for me, and I feel that it's probably something that everyone focuses on the tech side, but really if you just concentrate on the quality of your content, that's a big deciding factor as well for your success.
Makes a lot of sense. And Chantelle, another thing that you mentioned earlier, it's building the community around your business. Are you using Facebook groups for that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's very interesting because that's something that I've been not trying or doing, but I've been a member of quite a few groups more and more for the past year or so. And I've noticed that trend that you're kind of talking about, well, not a trend. It is a trend, but you didn't call it a trend. You just call it, really communicating with your community, keeping it together, getting them to talk, getting them to be active, And I've seen a lot of groups, more and more groups, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship or anything really, that this is where, for some online businesses, this is where they get probably like 75% of their income. It's through those groups, which is really incredible because, like 5 years ago, nobody really cared for groups and it was all fan pages. But what happens now, the shift that's happening, that a Facebook fan page for business, it's one-sided, right? You as a business can post stuff and people could comment, but people don't comment all that much because people want to post their own stuff. And this is where the groups come in because people could interact with each other and they could post stuff that they want to post and their questions and their answers. And I feel that in the past few years only, it really blew up, that whole aspect of community. And I think Facebook pages are really great for that. And not pages, I mean groups, Facebook groups are totally great for that. And it's free, which is another really good point, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's really interesting. So for my SCP, the 10-week online course that I do, I would hazard a guess that, and I would estimate that about 50% of the value, it's a $1,000 course, I would say about 50% of the value is the actual course itself, and 50% is just being a part of the group. Like the being in that consistent place where you're learning from people and you're able to form relationships with other studio owners. That's where the value is, because what people are looking for is the answers to their problems. And in a Facebook group, if it positions you as an authority so strongly, and if you're there and you're kind of really giving high level strategic guidance for people on their challenges and supporting them and inspiring and motivating them, that's what people love. And that's what I've seen in our Facebook group, particularly, that it's been such a beautiful way of bringing people together. But then from a retention perspective, it keeps them tapped into my business. So, it's a very, very smart way to go in order to sustain their relationships. And, if they're there having a chat and posting, it means that they're engaging. It means they're still finding your content relevant. It's the best indicator of the quality of what you're doing. From a benchmarking perspective, if I'm looking at the engagement within the Facebook group as an indicator of how well my business is performing, the more comments, the more shares, the more posts, it means that we're doing well. And so I actually really look at that from a management perspective of how well we are performing based on the quality of engagement in the Facebook group. The challenge comes when the groups get to, I'm sure you probably found this too, Alex, there are some groups that have now gotten to they've got 10,000 members where the volume is so big of posts that many people get lost in the wash. So I think there is a fine line. Sometimes a smaller group is actually a better quality group. So I'm not sure. I'm at this stage now where I'm kind of considering how am I going to kind of manage this Facebook group, because when it does get too big, people don't have that sense of personal relationship, and sometimes their posts don't get commented on because it just gets lost in the feed, and so that's going to be the next stage of how to maintain the quality of the Facebook groups as they grow, into the thousands as opposed to within the hundreds. So that's what I'm working on right now.
That's a really good question, actually. I haven't really thought of that. Now that you mention it, I'm like, wow, that could be a big problem, actually.
Well, I've seen it play out in groups like Marie Forleo's B School. There's about 14,000 in that group, and some of the main, and I, from a modeling perspective, watching that happen, there's been a lot of negative feedback kind of from people within the group that just, struggling with, well, I post, but it never gets seen. So people tend to post in the subgroups off the main group, like B School for Australians type thing. So it's kind of thinking about, okay, well, so what people are looking for is connection. It's not enough just to be in the group. They're wanting to be valued and heard and seen. So how do we as a business owner create a Facebook group to allow that, and because they're the big decisions that we need to consider. Yeah, and I don't know the answer just yet. I don't know, but I'll let you know, Alex. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, it's kind of like a good problem to have in a way that.
Oh yeah, great.
If you're having more people, that means that you're doing well.
Very high quality problem. We'll take that. We'll take that problem.
And I personally also like groups because I've seen a lot of people build businesses off of someone else's groups, which I find incredible. For instance, let's say your group that caters to studios, right? Let's say dance studios. And let's say that I am somehow related to a dance studio. Maybe like my girlfriend or my mother or somebody has a dance studio. So I sign up and I'm in your group and I'm, chatting with people, trying to help that person. Then I keep noticing that a lot of your members keep asking where could they find a good photographer for specifically that, for dance studio. And I'm a photographer, right? And this is when I'm like, it clicks for a lot of people. They're like, wow, it's really totally different business from what you're doing with your group. But they're like, there's so much demand from these businesses for something very specific that they can't seem to find easily.
Yes.
I could offer the service to them. And I've seen that happen quite a few times and always found that amazing. I'm like, wow, that's like, there is, how should I put it? It's the community itself grows and like helps other people grow in a way, right?
It's beautiful. And it's also great for market research. I mean, if you think about it, people are posting in the groups with their common challenges. So you can literally just scroll through the group and just go, okay, that's one problem for photography, that's one problem for Facebook ads, that's one problem for needing a team development. You can literally just in a nutshell see this is what people are facing right now, and then kind of construct your offering from there. So yeah, it's really, really smart to kind of use the group as kind of a testing ground, even using the polls and the little surveys in the Facebook group to get people's insights on what they really need. Is if you're considering about what business to start, using the groups as a testing ground is a brilliant idea, Alex. Really great, very strong.
Yeah, totally. And I post in different groups more often than I used to, and I post my links to my blogs, to my podcasts, and I didn't do it before because I always thought that it would be perceived as spam. Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying this because I know a lot of listeners of the podcast might get this idea that, groups are really targeted. So it will be nice to put your links in there and have people see your website. Now, this isn't really the case. What you need to do if you want to share your content with others, in groups especially, you have to make sure that people really, really want your content.
Yeah.
And you can't just post a link and that's it, just post it. You have to explain what the link is about. And in my opinion, more importantly, you have to explain why you're posting this link and how it will help people in this group. Because if you're not posting the right link and if you're not posting something that has like a lot of value, it doesn't add value to this specific group, chances are you will get kicked out rather fast.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or just people wouldn't ignore you. And there'll be no authority positioning, and people won't value your contribution, which is the worst thing that could happen. So yeah, it is a definite fine line. I was just thinking about what you said, Alex, and that when it comes to content creation, about leveraging the content in the group. So if you're thinking about if you're sitting down, you're going to record a whole lot more blog videos or blogs, write some blogs, literally just scrolling down and again, just identifying the common themes, common challenges, and then write preemptively a whole lot of blogs that you can then go back to them and say, oh, this is relevant to this problem, and then be able to copy and paste the link in there. I mean, that's the easiest way that we can be seen as relevant and contributing to the group, not just spamming the group, and using that as a forum to kind of devise ideas for content.
Yeah, totally. And to be honest with you, I've done that on a few occasions actually. I was in a group, one of the big FBA groups. Mm-hmm. It's for people who sell on Amazon, right? And a lot of people had this exact problem with pictures because product photographies could be quite expensive. So if you're really bootstrapping your business and you have ordered your products, or let's say from Asia, and you have paid your last $300 for the product and shipping, you can't really afford another $300 to $500 for a few shots of your product, right? Mm. But you need good shots. So what do you do? And I've seen this question asked I'm not joking here, like hundreds of times within 1 month or maybe 2 months. And I started thinking, like, I wasn't really thinking about that, but I had a similar problem. I wasn't selling anything on Amazon yet, but since I did blog posts, I was also always looking for pictures for my blog posts, and I wanted to make my own pictures. And eventually I figured out how to easily take a picture of an object with a white background and then how to edit it within like 2-3 minutes in Photoshop, and it looks like pretty
Right.
high quality professional picture, and it takes you, I don't know, 10 minutes, and it doesn't cost you anything. So the next time I did a little photo shoot of an object, I don't know what it was, but I documented the whole thing. So I had my girlfriend there taking pictures of me taking pictures. Right?
Yes, great.
So I did this like whole tutorial how I created my little photo box and what kind of cameras I used, because I used like an expensive camera and a cheap camera, just proving a point that you don't need a professional camera to make a nice picture. So I did like this really detailed tutorial, very like well explained every step. And then I created a blog post out of it. And then I shared that blog post in that specific group and told people, look, since so many of you were asking, here is how I would do product photos if I don't have any money to pay a photographer. And here's the item, and here's the result. Here's the final image. And here is your step-by-step, completely free, no opt-in, nothing. Just, go to my blog, follow the steps. And a lot of people send me great comments because they really loved it and it really helped them initially, So yes, that strategy works very well, but you have to pay a lot of attention, and you have to, you have to work hard, because you have to make sure the content you're giving, once again, it's all about the value. You can't give like average content. Your content has to be really good, and people need to see the value in that content.
Absolutely. And it's coming with that, like you were saying, like you saw the problem and you went and solved it. I mean, I think that coming from the attitude of service, I really that's one of my big values for running my businesses. It's how can I serve? What do they need? How can I help make their lives easier? And when you're coming from that place, as opposed to I just want to get my message in front of people, it's a very different shift in the impact that you make. And I think, I see so many people just, it's just self-promotion all the time. And it's not a long-term strategy, I suppose. It's not a recipe for success.
Yeah, it's not. And it's not only when we're talking about Facebook groups, it's about anything. People that try to find some kind of shortcuts and do stuff halfway, they're not set for long term, and they're not set for success. And my biggest problem with this is that you still will invest certain number of hours, right?
Absolutely.
Into doing that. And I'm going to invest the same number of hours, well, more eventually. In the long run, I'm going to put in more hours. But I'm going to build something sustainable that's going to give me return for years and years to come. You're going to put in 20, 30, 40 hours, maybe even a few hundred hours on doing something like that and kind of spamming all the groups. You might make a sale or two, but you're going to get banned from those pages. And in the end, you spend so many hours like for what? For nothing really. You wasted your time. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I completely agree. There has to be the bigger strategy behind it, and that's worth kind of. But I think it also comes down to like knowing what do you want to do, what is important to you about how you're going to interact, and having those questions about, what is your vision for the business? Where do you want to take this? How do you want to interact with people when they do kind of engage with you? What is the next step? Like having that bigger picture laid out, and that tends to make things a lot easier when you take the time to plan in the beginning, as opposed to just throwing together something to get something done. And it's hard, when you're just getting started, it's kind of bits by bits. But then, like as you kind of get momentum happening, really that planning time is the most important investment in your business. And I'm a big advocate for planning retreats and really kind of high level thinking about where are we going, why are we doing what we're doing, and getting very clear on the intention of what we're putting out into the world.
Yeah. Totally. And it's easy. Unfortunately, it's easier said than done, what you just mentioned. And
maybe,
I think this is
maybe it's a choice. It is a choice. Like if you look at when you have a lot of success with something, often it's the times when you've really kind of taken a step back and thought about it, and then kind of seen the bigger picture. Every time I've had really great success in my business, it's because I I kind of spent time thinking as opposed to just doing. And it is easier said than done, probably, but that doesn't mean it's actually more important. It's harder. It's easy not to do, but it's easy to do, but it's easy not to do as well. It's not hard to plan.
I totally agree with you that it should be a priority, but like looking back at the things that I've done, and I totally agree with you that whenever I spend a lot more time planning it properly and like figuring out a strategy that I'll follow, I saw a lot more success than when I just did something, just shoot it out there and then see what happens. For sure, 100%. But what I'm saying that especially for the beginners, it's so hard sometimes to figure out a strategy if you're not even sure why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, totally. It's super important and everybody has to, I think, but I just, I don't want people to freak out, especially those who don't know why they're doing what they're doing or like have no clue where they're going. And now they're like, oh my God, like I should just quit that because I have no idea what I'm doing. That's also a wrong attitude. People should not be scared of that. And as we mentioned a lot earlier, when it comes to like, let's say, technical side of things, we all had to start somewhere and we're all total newbies at some point. And that's the same thing with business. For me personally, I noticed that this planning and, figuring out a strategy comes a lot easier now than it did to me when I was just starting. Because, go ahead.
Let me share, because I totally hear you. And a lot of my studio owners are in that same boat. They are just keeping up, like they're like a duck kind of paddling on the water, and it looks like they're doing fine, but underneath their legs, their little fins are just flipping. So what I created for a lot of my studio owners is okay. So like they what happens often is that they get so consumed with kind of, okay, I've got to get more students. They dive into marketing, and what happens then is that maybe their attention kind of suffers, or if they're kind of concentrating on kind of hiring a new teacher, they let their admin side fall by the wayside. And so it's what I think for planning, what I created for my clients is I call it the arts quadrant. And this is just like on a Sunday evening or a Monday morning, I teach my lovely people to just sit down, and it's like if you divide a page into four squares, four rectangles, and you kind of identify what are the big categories within the business. So for example, for a studio, you've got attraction, so kind of the marketing, getting more students through the door. You've got retention, kind of maintaining the relationships. You've got your team of teachers, so the team is really important. And then S is for systems, your administration, your finance, your bookkeeping, etc. And those four quadrants are essentially the main parts. Even, if we think about it for your business or for an online business as well, you've got to have your kind of your opt-ins, your funnels, your attraction going, your posting in the groups. You've got to have the retention. So how am I kind of maintaining the relationships with my community, with my clients? Team, what am I doing maybe with my VA? What am I kind of having them project to work on? And then systems. So kind of looking at that, the back end of the business as well, or what I'm doing to kind of stay ahead of where we're at. And if you think about those four quadrants really are the backbone of the business. And so what I get my people to do is to like just at the beginning of a week, just set 1 or 2 or 3 goals in each category. And so it's a really simple way just to kind of keep your eye on the bigger picture. But also make sure, because what happens often is that if one of those 4 quadrants gets neglected, we're not completely in sync. So having that kind of a bit of structure is probably the easiest way to make planning a little bit easier, I would say. That system works really well. I love working on a quarterly basis, a 90-day goal. That's really important in my business as well. At the beginning of the year, I write down all of my annual goals, usually ends up about like 25, 30 goals. And then I kind of take that list and I divide them into each of the 4 quarters. So it's like, okay, what do I want to get done this year? Where do I want to be? How many clients do I want to have? What revenue do I want to make? What creative projects do I want to roll out? And then I just kind of put them into each quarter. And then from each quarter, so that usually ends up about 7 or 8 or so in each quarter. And then I just divide them between the months. And so once you've got them within each month, you can then go, okay, this week I just have to do this. And it's that for me is the best planning system of taking the really big kind of annual goals and making sure week by week I'm on track. And so then I'm using the arts quadrant each week as well. So I'm kind of making sure I'm maintaining all areas in the business, but then I'm also working towards the annual goals as well. So I hope that's a bit helpful, that that the structure sometimes is the key to the planning. Because if you just sit down like, oh, what am I working on? That's hard. I get that. I really do. And having a bit more of an idea about what specifically needs to be done in each of the areas of the business has really been useful for my clients. So I hope that is beneficial, Alex.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing that. And this is really, really great advice. And you recently started looking at Trello. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh yes, it's my favorite tool. I love it.
There you go. Mm-hmm. That's something that's new to me, and I'd like to suggest it to the listeners of the Extra Paycheck podcast. This is a planner, I guess. I don't know how to really
it's a
classify this tool.
It's a project management tool, and so it's so clever. Like Trello is and it's free. That's the best thing about it, I suppose. Yeah. And you can collaborate. So you can bring your team members. You could bring your VA. I actually use it from a coaching perspective as well, Alex. So when I'm working one-on-one with my clients, I have a Trello board with each one, and so literally when we start working together, Trello has columns of kind of categories within the business. So, or there's categories of like what you're working on, and then little cards within each category that you can drag between the columns. And so when I start working one-on-one with a client, okay, annual outcomes. What are we doing in the next 12 months? And so we do all of them, and then we break them down into our quarters. So then I've got a different Trello column for each quarter, and then that drills down right down to what they have to do that week. So if you are doing kind of coaching work as part of your online business, it's a really good way of making sure that they're feeling like you're giving them the structure and accountability to stay on track towards their bigger goals. And it really helps you as well when you get to your next month call. You just go into the Trello board and you can see all your notes from the previous call, and it's all in the one place. You don't have to kind of scrounge through emails or anything like that. And Trello is you can also use it in, for example, a pipeline way. So you can use it to manage your launches. You could even use it to manage your relationships. So kind of like whether you've got like a hot lead, a cold lead, or where they are in the kind of the sign up process if you're kind of working with higher level clients. It's oh my gosh, it's a high powered tool. It's revolutionary for many people I work with, and I'm a big fan. So I'm glad you're on deck.
Yeah, totally. I started using it and I was like, wow, that is so much better than me making my plans and goals as I usually do, which means on different scraps of paper and notebooks.
Yeah.
And then you try to figure out where everything is, and you're like, I had this really important thing to do on Friday, but you can't remember what it was. This way, it just helps you stay organized, which someone like me really, really needs. I need help being organized. And Trello is a great tool for that. And Chantelle, as you just mentioned, it's totally free, which is amazing. It comes on computers, and I think you could, you have it as an app.
It's
as well,
a great
which
app.
Is great.
The app is fantastic. My clients even use it for dance studios. They actually have their class roll, so they get the teacher goes into the class, and it's like, okay, who's not here today? And then they just drag those child's name into the next column, and that kind of straight away the studio owner can be at home and they can see instantly on their attendance in the class. There are so many applications you can use Trello that are so practical. It's even like, I got married last year. It was like wedding planning HQ on Trello. It's brilliant. It's a really fantastic tool.
Yeah, totally. Highly suggested. All right, Chantelle, I would like to ask you to share something maybe not that great with our listeners. Maybe you could share one of your biggest struggles. It doesn't have to be with your current business, but maybe in your entrepreneur career. What was like one of the maybe hardest points for you that you had to overcome?
Oh, okay. This is, given that your focus is on online business, I'll kind of share an example. I did a launch last year where everything went wrong tech-wise, and I had 13 separate integrations fail within a 2-week period. It was very, very stressful. And I think my advice is, because so often technology fails you, and it's a part of running an online business. It is the core. And people, like my mum says, can I do anything to help? It's like, there's nothing she can do to help me. Bless her, but there's really nothing. Yeah. And how to keep your cool when excuse my language, but the shit hits the fan. It's that kind of like what to do when everything goes wrong, from like whether your opt-ins failed or your webinar signups. That will happen to me. The webinar signups weren't going through, and I'm enrolling like 500 people per webinar, and if it's not capturing the information, it's a big deal.
Ouch, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And it's interesting, like as you go through the entrepreneurial kind of pathway and the journey, you get better at just going, it's okay, and just getting more support. One of the biggest lessons I learned is that for that previous launch, I only had my one VA, and relying on one person wasn't a great solution. As you kind of grow, it's probably better, instead of having one person full time, I would recommend probably going for 2 part-time people. In the case of if someone gets sick, you've got someone else to rely on. And so now I'm building my team with that kind of almost like a risk management perspective, Alex. Like, sometimes it's things are going to go wrong and we need to plan for it. And it to be okay when it does happen. And like my attitude was like, I'm just going to go to bed. I'm going to have a sleep, and I'm going to look at this with fresh eyes in the morning. And sometimes there is actually nothing you can do. And it's one of the hardest things about running an online business, but it's also where our business is based and where all opportunities lie. So that was probably one of the most challenging things that happened to me last year, Alex. It was learning to be able to cope with the stress of things that are outside of your control, especially from a tech. And I'm not a particularly techie person. So yeah, that was really big for me to learn. It's okay. It will all work out. Have faith in your team, and in the next time, be more prepared in advance. Give yourself more time than you think you need. That's big tip. Big tip.
Totally. Thank you for sharing that. And this is something that I like to ask the guests on the podcast, because it's not always, as you mentioned, fun and beautiful to run a business. We all have hiccups and we all have these roadblocks that we have to overcome. And often we don't talk about them with people because, well, what's the point? Why would you tell all your customers that you're having technical issues? I mean, they don't care. It's not interesting to them.
Yeah.
But it's for other entrepreneurs who, might see you and other successful people as in, well, everything just working for them. No, guys, that's not true. Everything's not working. There's like more issues than you could imagine, but we kind of have to battle through them and find a way out and keep your cool, as you just said, Chantelle.
Yeah, and that's really it about, like, the customers don't need to know. Like, I'm a really big fan of, like, yes, you can be kind of, there's 2 schools of thought. You can kind of go to your audience and go like, oh my gosh, this is all happening. Please forgive us, da 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 da. Or you can just kind of, what I kind of call the shiny disco ball, and I kind of give them something sparkly to distract them, to give myself a bit more time. So I kind of work on that modality. I kind of go like, here's something really fabulous that's going, and then it buys me a bit of time to work on the problem. But you're so right, Alex. Truly, running a business is not glamorous, and it certainly is not. It is. There are days when it's harder, but I have to say, I love what I do so much, and I wouldn't change it for anything. I absolutely love what I do. I love the people I work with. I love running an online business. I love the opportunities that we have. And, building the team, while it's kind of a bit further down the line, has been such a rewarding experience for me. And I'm so grateful to have an online business and the freedom it gives, and the more people I can connect with, and the tech challenges, they're just part of the business. Every job has its downsides, and it's something to live with, and you just eat a bit more chocolate and you get through it, and life is okay.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for sharing that. And I've had stuff happen to me. I've lost my actual Extra Paycheck blog twice, I think.
Wow. Once
it was hacked, like all of my websites were hacked, and I lost everything. Another time, this is a stupidity, but this is why I always tell people about it. What happened that I went to Europe, I think, on vacation, and all of my accounts, hosting, domain names, everything was linked to the same credit card. And I didn't really pay as much attention to my business back then. I just decided to go and have fun. And I didn't realize that my credit card was expiring while I was away. So all of my payments failed to go through. So everyone shut me down. My list building tool, my hosting, my everything, And it's like, it's a mistake that I made. Yes, I agree. but it's a messy one, and it's hard to get everything back online. So I had to contact them and give them a new credit card and try to get back up so I don't lose the site, but I still lost it for a while. Anyway, it just, things happen. And as you said, none of us is like safe from from technical
it's actually
issues.
funny we're talking about this. So this morning I was woken up by a Skype message at 6:30 by my VA saying studioexpansion.com is down. My website went down overnight, and I woke up to that. It's like, oh, here we go. And, it's back up now, in a couple of hours later. But it's part of it. You just got to roll with it. And I think like if you can get to that stage of like, it is so hard, but almost to like detach from that intensity of emotion, just go, okay, what do I need to do? Let's do it. But if we don't go into that kind of drama cycle, I think we get through it a lot better. If we can keep our cool, it's going to help us in the long run because it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, totally. All right, Chantelle, before ending this episode, I would like to ask you to share your biggest and most important advice to any beginner entrepreneur.
It's a great question, Alex. Could you give me some heads up on this? I would have really thought about it. My biggest advice, if I look back of what's been transformational in my business and what helped me go from just a kind of a starting company to kind of really making a bit of traction, it was the mentors and the people and joining a mastermind. My mastermind group has been absolute core of my world for the last 2 years, and these women that I'm in the mastermind with I've learned so much from them. They've pushed me. I remember going to the very first mastermind meeting that I was in, the group that I was in, and I was sitting next to two girls on either side of me, and they were doing 50 grand a month, and I was totally in awe. I remember being like, oh my gosh, like they're these like super women. Unbelievable. Yeah. And I just got to know them over time and saw, it's really good to be in a mastermind with people further down the line with you who have already been through that stage and who know how to navigate the waters. And so I just got to know these women and I kind of watched what they did. I saw how they thought and I looked what they were doing in their businesses. And then I just thought, okay, well, I'll just do that. And from learning from them and having their support and encouragement and knowing, well, if they can do it, I can do it. That attitude shift and just being surrounded by people who were successful in the online sphere made the difference in my business. From going to from one launch, from like the last launch I did when I for example, I did like a $6,000 launch and then I did a $32,000 launch, and that's when I joined the group. And then the next one I did 120 grand launch. So, it's really exponential growth when you start surrounding yourself with the right people, with the right attitudes, and who know what's important to focus on and who can kind of, pull you out from under the table when you need to be pulled out. So that would be my biggest bit of advice. Stay around the right kind of people who are further down the line with you. And when you get to the stage of when you're then the big fish, you need to go to a bigger pond. So always kind of putting yourself with people who are further down the line with you, who you can really learn from and who almost make you nervous. You want to be in a room with people who you're like, oh my gosh, these people are unbelievable. I can't believe that they're doing that. That's the room you want to be in as much as you can, because if you're in that room, it means you're on path and you're on track to getting there. And so I strive to put myself in those opportunities as much as I can, because I know it's going to challenge me to grow faster and grow smarter. So that would be my biggest bit of advice, Alex.
If you're the smartest guy in the room, then you're in the wrong room.
Get out of the room. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is amazing advice, and I think it's especially helpful for people who work online, because we tend to be lonely. We tend to, be in our little bubble, and you're working on your projects, and we don't socialize, especially with like-minded people, which, once again, thanks to internet, could be solved so easily. There's mastermind groups that you could join. There's free ones. There's so many like Facebook groups that would appeal to you, whatever you're doing online or even offline. If you're running an offline business, there are probably Facebook groups surrounding your specific industry and people with the same struggles as you, and the successful ones, which you could learn from. And Chantelle, a really interesting thing that you mentioned here, and I say that often, very often, that I follow certain people online, usually people who have achieved what I want to achieve eventually. And I do pay attention to what they say, their content, but I pay a lot more attention to what they do and how they do it. Because, their success is happening because of what they're doing and how they're doing. So this is where I pay most of my attention. If it works for them, it will be working for me. I just have to figure out what parts of stuff that they do that I could apply to my own business.
It's that reverse engineering, looking at it from, they're getting the results. How did they get there? And what are they doing consistently to be able to make that happen? It's really interesting. And then just doing what you can. I mean, like, of course, we can't have, we're probably not at the stage yet of having $5 million businesses, but let's kind of look at like taking one element of what they're doing, mastering it, and then adding more as you go. And that's the benefit of working with a coach as well. I'm really grateful that I had a great coach who kind of said, stop doing that as well. That's the other thing I've found, is that people try and do too much. And especially my clients, they want to do so many things. It's like, no, just do this. Get really good at this. Get really consistent at this. Master this. And concentrate on what is going to really move the needle on the revenue in your business, because that's going to give you a lot more opportunity. So that would be my other little bit of advice, to just really get laser focus in on what's going to make the biggest difference and concentrate on that, and not to get too distracted, because that's a real big challenge. There's so much we can do, but what is actually is the right thing to do.
This is also great advice. Concentrating on that one thing and being good at one thing and then expanding to others. Really, really great advice and really helpful for, once again, any business, regardless what you're doing, what kind of business, online or offline. Chantelle, before you go, hopefully there's some people that have studios and they're listening to this podcast, and maybe they want to reach out to you, and maybe they want to sign up to your courses and see what you're doing. How can they reach you? Where can they look up that information?
Absolutely. Well, please feel free to, if you have got any personal questions, please feel free to email me. My email address is Chantelle, Chantelle, @studioexpansion.com. The best way to go, if you're kind of curious about kind of finding out more about what I do, is I run a free video course, which is called 30 Enrollments in 30 Days. And these are 4 videos where I walk you through how to really kind of expand upon your marketing and attract more students, 30 more students within the next month. And so if you go to studioexpansion.com, you can opt in and you can kind of join me for those videos, and you'll see what I'm all about. There's resources that go along with it as well. So that is the best way to get involved. Otherwise, I run webinars quite regularly as well. So if you'd like to jump on one of them, please feel free. It'd be great to have you on board.
All right, Chantelle, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your experiences, and your tips. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. As usual, I will be putting up show notes page at extrapodcast.com/58, where you will be able to find resources, links, and other things mentioned in today's episode. Also, head over to extrapodcast.com/iTunes in order to subscribe to the show, leave a rating and a review, which will help me tremendously. Thank you so much once again, and I'll talk to you next Monday.